I was awakened by a loud pop that cut through the peaceful morning silence. At first I thought it might be a car backfiring, but something in my gut told me to check outside. I threw on some clothes and rushed to my front window. My heart sank as I saw my black Mercedes-Benz leaning awkwardly to one side, the front tire completely flat. But what made my blood boil was the sight of Karen, our HOA president, standing across the street on her perfectly manicured lawn with an unmistakable smirk on her face. When she noticed me looking, she didn't even try to hide her satisfaction. "You're rich, buy a new one," she called out loud enough for the whole street to hear. I couldn't believe what I was witnessing. Was this really happening? I grabbed my phone and stormed outside, but by then she had already turned and was walking back to her house, that smug smile still plastered across her face. Little did she know that in just a few hours she would be surrounded not just by furious neighbors, but by police officers with handcuffs ready. I had moved into Oakwood Estates just 3 months ago after years of hard work and saving. This was my dream home in a beautiful neighborhood with tree-lined streets and well-maintained properties. I was especially proud of my Mercedes-Benz, which I had purchased to celebrate my promotion after 10 years at the same company. It wasn't about showing off. It was a symbol of what I had accomplished through dedication and perseverance from day one. Karen Thompson, the self-appointed queen of the neighborhood and long-standing HOA board president, had it out for me at the first community meeting I attended. She barely acknowledged my introduction before launching into a speech about maintaining the character of our community, while staring pointedly in my direction. Within a week, I received my first citation for improper waste bin placement. Even though my bins were exactly where my neighbors had theirs the next week, it was for excessive lawn ornaments. I had exactly one small garden gnome. We've never had problems until certain people moved in. I overheard her telling another board member one evening as I walked my dog past the community center. The cold stare and whispered comments continued for weeks. I tried to be cordial, even going out of my way to greet her when we crossed paths, but she would simply purse her lips and look away, as if I was beneath her notice. Karen's resentment seemed to grow with each passing day. She began leaving passive-aggressive notes in my mailbox about excessive displays of wealth and how certain vehicles were lowering property values. I found it ridiculous. There were several luxury cars in the neighborhood, but mine seemed to be the only target of her hostility. When I hosted a small housewarming gathering on a Saturday afternoon with just 10 friends, Karen called in a noise complaint to the police at 6 p.m., claiming we were disturbing the peace, even though we were simply chatting on the patio with some light music playing. The tension continued to build. I started hearing from other neighbors that Karen had been spreading rumors about me, that I was a show-off who didn't belong in Oakwood Estates. One neighbor, Linda, warned me that Karen had a history of targeting new residents, who she felt threatened her status in the community. When I tried to join the Neighborhood Beautification Committee, my application was mysteriously lost twice. Then came the morning of the flat tire. I noticed a handwritten note tucked under my windshield wiper that read, "Some of us work for a living instead of flaunting our wealth." The handwriting looked familiar from all the citations I had received. I inspected the tire more closely and realized it hadn't just gone flat. There was a clean slice through the sidewall. This wasn't an accident. It was deliberate sabotage. A week earlier, after receiving several threatening notes, I had installed a motion-activated security camera that covered my driveway. I hadn't told anyone about it. It was just a precaution. Now I was thankful for my foresight. I rushed back inside and pulled up the footage from early that morning there. It was clear as day. At 4:30 a.m., Karen walked purposefully up my driveway, looked around to make sure no one was watching, pulled a knife from the sleeve of her jacket, and deliberately stabbed my front tire. The footage was unmistakable. There was no room for denial. I was beyond furious, but decided to handle this carefully. I called my neighbor Robert, who was also on the HOA board and had been sympathetic to my situation. He came over, watched the footage, and was equally shocked. "We need to confront her with evidence." He advised this isn't just HOA pettiness anymore. This is criminal vandalism. Later that afternoon, Robert helped me gather several neighbors who had also experienced Karen's vindictive behavior. We approached her house as a group, and when she answered the door, her usual smug expression faltered momentarily at the sight of us. "We need to talk about what you did to my car this morning," Karen, I said firmly. Holding up my phone with the video queued up, she tried to maintain her composure, rolling her eyes dramatically. "I don't know what you're talking about." I played the video. Her face went pale, but she quickly recovered. "So what, you're rich? What's one tire? Maybe now you'll learn to be more humble about your possessions." She said this with such casual disdain that several neighbors gasped. "This isn't about the tire," Karen Robert interjected. "This is about property damage and harassment. We've all had enough." What happened next surprised even me. One by one, neighbors began sharing their stories. Maria from down the street described how Karen had keyed her car after a disagreement about fence height. James from the corner house revealed that Karen had damaged his custom mailbox after he voted against one of her proposals at an HOA meeting. Sarah, a newer resident like me, explained how Karen had fabricated violations against her home and threatened fines if she didn't conform to standards. The tide was turning, and Karen could sense it. Her smug demeanor gave way to defensive anger. "You're all ungrateful. I'm the only one keeping this neighborhood decent without me. This place would fall apart," she shouted, her face wringing with each word. Robert, who had been quietly sending messages on his phone during the confrontation, calmly announced, "The police are on their way. Karen, we're filing formal charges for vandalism and harassment, and the HOA board is calling an emergency meeting to review your position." Karen's eyes widened with shock. "You can't do that. I am the HOA." She sputtered, but her voice lacked its usual authority. Within 20 minutes, 2 police cruisers pulled up to Karen's house. The officers reviewed the video evidence and took statements from multiple neighbors as they explained to Karen that they were placing her under arrest for vandalism and criminal mischief. Her facade completely crumbled. "This is ridiculous. I was protecting our property values," she screamed as the officers calmly placed handcuffs on her wrists. "That car doesn't belong in this neighborhood. He doesn't belong here," she continued, lashing out, insisting she was the only one keeping the neighborhood decent. But not a single person stepped forward to defend her. Her famous smirk disappeared entirely as she was led to the police car, still yelling about my Mercedes and how I was ruining the neighborhood with my flashy lifestyle. Several neighbors had gathered on the street by now, watching in stunned silence as the self-proclaimed Queen of Oakwood Estates was driven away in a police car. The aftermath was swift and severe for Karen. During the investigation, the police discovered that she had been misusing HOA funds for years, redirecting money meant for community improvements to target residents she didn't like and reward those who supported her. She had manipulated financial reports and falsified complaints to justify her personal vendettas against residents who threatened her control 3 weeks after her arrest. Karen appeared in court looking nothing like the imperious neighborhood dictator. We knew she was found guilty of criminal mischief, vandalism, and embezzlement of HOA funds. The judge sentenced her to 6 months of probation community service and ordered her to pay full restitution for all damaged property, including $1,200 for my high-performance tire. She was also permanently barred from serving on any HOA board or community leadership position as the sentence was read. Karen's face contorted with disbelief. "But I dedicated my life to this community," she protested, her voice cracking. The judge simply replied, "The community deserves better." She turned to glare at me one last time as she was escorted out of the courtroom, her eyes filled with hatred, but her power completely stripped.